Hi, you're watching FRCD on CAN TV. Family Resource Center on Disabilities is the Region 1 Parent Training and Information Center in Illinois. You can reach us at 312-939-3513. We encourage you to visit our website at www.frcd.org, and we encourage you to follow us on social media. You can find us on Facebook, Twitter at FRCDPTI, and YouTube at FRCD1231. Family Resource Center on Disabilities is not a law firm or a legal service agency. Hi, my name is Paula Wills, and I'm from Family Resource Center on Disabilities, and this is FRCD on CAN TV, where we discuss special education, parent advocacy, and resources for families of children with disabilities. And today I am happy to welcome our guest, Will Rowling from Access Living. Today he is going to talk to us about a very important program titled Firearm Violence Resource Project. But before we get to that, let's learn a little bit more about Will. Hi, Will. Welcome to the show.
Hi, Paula. Thank you for having me.
Now, we're so happy for you to be here. So, can you talk about Access Living?
Yes, Access Living is a cross disability organization that specializes in youth advocacy, peer-to-peer support, and they also advocate disability laws for people of all different disabilities.
Thank you. So, how did you come to Access
Oh,
Living?
well, I would say probably about 10 years ago, I started out at Access Living. My counselor referred me to them because they had a training program going on there. So I decided to sign up for it. It was a great experience for me, and I met some good people throughout that 9-month process. And the good thing about it is they actually even paid us for it. So it was a great experience for me. They taught us how to do mock interviews, how to create resumes. So it was very helpful. So throughout that time, I actually kept in contact with a few people, and I still talk to them on today.
Yeah, I
So
have to
that's my
thank you so
go ahead.
much. I would just say, yeah, I've had the opportunity and privilege to work with, alongside some of the advocates at Access Living, and you guys are into some of everything, like advocating for
Yes,
housing, advocating not education, transition
yes,
planning. You guys are always down at Springfield. I remember, like at the
yes,
beginning of the pandemic, where there was concerns about like just special education and whether or not they will hold up IEPs. Access Living was at the forefront of like, you guys are not going to move without us. Medical care, everything. So yeah, when pretty
yes,
much when I hear
yes,
Access Living, I even like go to your website to like what are the issues that are happening in Illinois, and because you guys are always on top of it. So that being said,
yes.
you guys are you currently have this project called the Firearm Violence Resource Project. Can you talk about that and what it entails?
Well, the program is about gunfire victims, um, and basically what we try to do is figure out what issues they experience when they first were injured, and our job is to try to gather in as much data as possible about their experiences and things that they had lack of. And basically, what we try to do is I would say look between the gaps of some of those resources that they was unable to have access to, and see if perhaps we can actually create policy to put in new additional resources so that way it will benefit the current gunshot survivors and also unfortunately the new up and coming gunshot survivors. So that's basically what the whole project is about.
So when you talk about data, can you give us a few examples? So are you looking at like age or like what all is encompassed in what you're trying to
Certainly,
gather in regards to data for?
certainly. Well, we have like a questionnaire. It's about 5 questions. And we make it clear before we ask the questions, hey, if any of these questions trigger any of your anxiety, let us know beforehand. So that way we want to, disconnect. We don't want to trigger some of those old emotions. So we definitely let them know that beforehand. So some of the questions can be a little bit too traumatizing in a way,
Mm-hmm.
in a sense, because they have to kind of relive some of those moments and talk about some of their bad experience, either where it could be with limited resources or perhaps issues they probably experience with the healthcare professionals or even a family member. So we try to figure out all those things and see if they're willing to share those things with us, and if so, what our job is to try to do going forward is to try to see how we can actually implement better, healthcare systems if need be, through
Okay.
creating policy to make sure that everyone is well taken care of.
So when you say
Hopefully that
poly,
answers your question.
oh yeah, no, absolutely it does. Because sometimes when we hear the words, the words data,
Okay.
and things thrown around, and I mean, again, we work
Hmm.
at I work at Family Resource Center on Disability, so the words data gets thrown around so much. But it's kind of hard to paint a picture. Like, what do you mean by data? Like, I
Yeah.
just think numbers and stuff. But there's like lots of stories and people behind those numbers. So
Yeah.
when you start like putting that at the forefront,
Hmm.
it kind of paints a different picture for you. So that's why I always ask, like, so when you say data, what do you mean? Which you did explain. Um, so I know you guys were doing like a series of webinars that people could participate on. If am I correct in that? I think you held,
Webinars.
or was it wasn't maybe it wasn't webinars. I know you had like earlier last month. You guys had a couple of events dates. That was it that people were submitting information, or were they actually events?
Well, they were
That
events. We was
flyer.
there. The purpose of this,
There was a
yes.
flyer that
The purpose.
you guys had that you had a couple of dates on there, in regards to the project that you guys. Um,
Yes. Those. Oh, the listening session. You're probably
yes,
referring
that's what
to
I'm
the
thinking of.
flyers that had some of the listening sessions.
Yes, that's what I'm talking. I'm sorry.
Yeah. What? Oh, it's okay. Well, the reasoning for that is because we was in the process of trying to recruit gunshot victims. Fortunate for me, I met someone. I only met one gentleman. I had the pleasure of meeting him, and I explained to him the reasoning behind the program, and to also let him know that he'd be compensated for it as well. And So that's the only thing I'm familiarized with that I'm aware of
Yeah, that's
that was
exactly what
taking
I was
place at
talking
the
about.
disability parade. Yeah.
So, what did you want to share your personal story? I know you are an author, and in discussing
Yes.
this very area. So, in addition to working with Access Living, you also have like some personal experience with this, and you've written a book to actually help the community and other people who may be experiencing what you've gone through yourself. Do you want to share that with us?
Yes, please. And thank you for bringing that up. Um, to backtrack a little bit, so when I completed the 9-month training program and stayed in contact with Candace, who's a youth organizer, she reached out to me last year and asked me if I would like to be a part of this program. And I said, yes, of course, I would love to. So also her reasoning for me to join the program is to also share, as you stated, that I'm an author. And for those of you who would like to support me, here's the book. The name of the book is called Miracle Man. It's on Amazon. All you have to do is type in my name, Wooly Rowland, click enter, it'll pop up. But yes, so the purpose of this book is because I wanted to share with everyone how I was affected and how I was able to show resilience through my horrific experience. So I talk about briefly my childhood. It's a three-part memoir. The first part is about my childhood, my upbringing, talks about how I was on the verge of completing my associate's degree at Robert Morris College in computer networking. And then shortly out of nowhere, all of a sudden, boom, this happens. So of course, I had a lot of dark moments. It was very therapeutic and challenging for me to discuss those dark moments in part two of the book, but I felt that it was needed. Anger inside. So I knew that what I was going through at the time was not uncommon. I'm quite sure others could relate to it. So I had to figure out a way on how to challenge and resolve those issues. So part three basically talks about how I have a new state of mind, how I was able to rethink my way through it. I share different methods and techniques on how I was able to overcome the emotional part of dealing with my situation by being a paraplegic in a wheelchair for 20 years now. And I also talk about the numerous of things that I was able to accomplish by being in a wheelchair. So this is something that I definitely love sharing with everyone and let them know, like, hey, regardless of what you're going through in life, you're going to be faced with different issues, when you're dealing with life uncertainties. But if you're able to work your way through it and you have short and long-term goals set, you will be able to accomplish those things, and it's possible. And I'm actually living proof that it's possible.
So can you talk about those like short and long term goals? Because as you said, like it's a traumatic experience. You've lived with it for a long time.
Yeah.
How do you get to the point where you're ready to start setting goals, or did that
Well,
take time?
you have to start with being able to accept the situation for what it is. Because although it's a harsh reality, we all don't like to accept harsh reality in different circumstances. So you have to, like they say, you have to start somewhere or to get somewhere. So you have to make up in your mind, like, hey, this is the situation at hand, and I have to work my way through it. So fortunate for me, I had a great supportive family and also medical staff who was willing to support me also by encouraging me to say, hey, go to therapy. This is going to better your situation. So once I had it set up in my mind that I know I need to exercise and better myself, that was like my first goal there, to say, like, you know what, I'm not just going to lay here in the bed and just waste my life. I'm here for a reason. I'm here at this facility. I'm going to make use of. I'm not going to give them a hard time because they're trying to help me. So I had to start out by saying, you know what, my first short-term goal is I'm going to work trying to improve my health by making it my business to get up every morning at whatever time they need me to and go downstairs to the therapy room and work out in therapy. So that would be a good starting point for anyone that's in a situation. Once you understand what the situation is that you're faced with, you know as they always say, I'm a firm believer in yin and yang, meaning there's a positive and negative. So granted, yes, you have to evaluate the negative side, but there's also a positive side that goes along with it as well too. And I think if you solely focus on the positive side of your situation, it'll be able to balance it out and make it a lot more easier for you. And you just have to take it one day at a time, from start to finish. Because I mean, from the early rising up until you lay down and rest your head at night, because you have to appreciate the moment and just take it one day at a time, but also live within the moment. Take it one moment at a time. And once you do that and focus on that, it'll kind of help you be able to deal with things a lot more mentally. So yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing that. Because I think of people when they experience different traumas or even just, events in their life, just getting to like from one point to the next. And some people never make it to that next point where they're ready to, move on to the next stage. Some people stay stuck. So have you? I
Yeah.
mean, in your work, do you count? Have you encountered that? And how do you help a person work past it? Or, is there a point where maybe it's
Sorry, I'm kind of. Can you speak up a little bit?
okay? Sorry, can you hear me now?
Yeah, there you go. Now, can you
Okay.
repeat that last part again?
Okay. No, I was asking. So in your work, when you come
Hmm.
across people who maybe have not person at that time? How do you navigate through that? Because I
That's a good
imagine,
question. Um, I just be honest with them and say, hey, it starts with you. That's your starting point. So, you have free will in the court. You know what I mean? I let them know that it all starts with you. At the end of the day, like you can have the best support system around you, but if it's going in one ear and going out the next, then you're not going to be able to accomplish, any goals or what have you. So I usually just be honest with them, but do it respectfully, and you know, try to talk to the person to understand them more, to try to figure out like which angles on which route I can go, which way I can't. You know what I mean?
right.
Um, but and also I pray for them. I pray, but I understand that everyone may not believe in prayer, and they have the right to believe that. So whenever I also feel like I try to do my best to encourage them, but I also make sure that I make it my personal business, even when I'm around that person or I leave from around them, that if I know they're having a challenging time making it through their situation, I always just try to check in on them, encourage them, and just pray for them, all the time. So that's usually my approach on how I try to help people get through certain moments if they're having a hard time getting through whatever they're going through.
Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing that. So I kind of want to jump back to the policy point. You guys mentioned that you're doing this listening tour, talking to other survivors. So, in what you've been doing so far, what type of policy are you looking at? Medical, have you seen any kind of a trend or something that you will be willing to talk about?
Well, as far as the policy part, that will not go into effect until next year, the beginning of next year, because they gave us a time limit to work with a certain amount of victims
Okay.
up until January of next year. So, but I will say I've met some great people who have shared some wonderful stories. Some of them are similar, but different in their own way based on how the experience occurred. Um, and also, quite a few of them have already, they already are well established, where they already have some of their own organizations. So just through that alone itself was really helpful towards us,
Right.
because we're not just trying to help them get from one point to another point, but they're also willing to help us in return by sharing their information with us to where we can network with one another. So I would say that was probably been the most biggest highlight out of all of this, is the fact that some of the individuals have already been established, and they're being open to sharing their experiences with us, and they're also willing to work with us and participate at some of the up and coming events that we have scheduled.
So, what outcome would you like to see? Like, if let's say there is policy or just a change, what specific change would you like to see come of this?
Just for people to have better resources, more so dealing with medical, housing, and employment, emotional standpoint, because some of them was affected emotional. I would say it was probably about a couple of stories to where a young lady, who I'm not going to say her name out of respect, she mentioned how she received more emotional support from the medical staff than her own family. Now, it was unfortunate. We couldn't really although it wasn't about us trying to encourage her, because we were trying to get information from us. But me being who I am and having a heart, outside of the listen session, you still want to try to encourage a person and give them advice. But I pretty much couldn't even explain to her or give her advice about her family situation. I just felt like that wasn't really meant for me to speak on. But it was interesting to learn that, because I feel like that was something that needed to be shared with everyone. Now, that is a situation we would have to look more into. I can't really say if we have came up with any solutions for that, because that's more so of a personal home issue. Um, but I would just say mainly what we can do is just improve some of the medical staff. We met a couple of individuals who basically stated that they experienced, bad attitudes with some of the medical staff, and they said, they was being polite, although they was in excruciating pain because it was a gunshot victim. They were still able to deal with the pain and still try to be respectful. But in my case, I was fortunate. I didn't have any issues with none of the medical staff members, probably except one, but my parents addressed that. Um, and plus, I have my parents who has been my support system since day one. So mainly, like I said, to answer your question, hopefully I didn't. Sorry for speaking too much, but
Not at all.
mainly our objective is to just basically have just better, productive resources in place, just to better things. That's all, for the most part.
No, absolutely. Thank you. I mean, you bring up many great points first of all, but the one that really stuck out to me is like that support system. Um,
Yeah,
having because you don't know what depending on the person's situation, you may not necessarily be able to get the type of support that you need from your family, or you may not be able to get the support that you need from the medical situation, depending on what the situation is. So the
that's
importance of
correct.
like having support or access to a support system um, is very key. So
Yes,
thank you so much for sharing that in regards, because I know like in doing this work
you're welcome.
you do have to collect, I mean, you do have to collect information, but behind this information are people, and when they're sharing their stories, yes, you're gathering information, but there's that level of compassion you have to understand
Yeah,
that even there's some needs that may not have been addressed. So like there's
correct.
still open wounds. So I genuinely appreciate you for sharing that. Often when you're doing this type of work, um, the work that uh, how did that slip my mind so quickly? Access Living
Excellent.
does,
Living.
and it's special education. Often people come to you when they're in crisis, or or
Yeah,
so like being that you have to be a good listener at the same time you also have to extract information and provide resources. So the type of
yeah.
work I know that you do and the people at Access Living do is it's not for the faint of heart. You have to have
Uh,
a extra level of compassion to
yes, you do. Yeah,
so yeah, no, thank you so much. And then also, when I think about like especially living in the city of Chicago, we all watch the 10 o'clock news, and you just hear gunshot, victim. Nobody thinks beyond that. So it's also very important to shed light on that, and I think it's also excellent that the disability community is also looking at that, because sometimes people like to separate disabilities, as in people who are born with disabilities, and then there's people who become disabled. And Candace Coleman, I do believe, pointed out you can become disabled at any time in your life. So
that is correct.
so yeah, so like
And that happened to me.
that very true, very true. But
Yeah,
thank you for like taking this traumatic experience and help trying to help and uplift other people who may have experienced it, because it is easy, depending on where you sit in life, to just kind of sweep it under the rug. Oh, well, that just happened, that happens in this community, that happens in that community, and that's not the case. These are real people, these are human beings. It can happen to any of us, and yes, there should be policies and things to address that. And again, thank
absolutely.
you so much.
Oh, you're welcome.
So at this point, I want to ask how long will, so you mentioned that this project will be going on for the rest of this year, and then you're going to be looking at the policy angle next year, or did I understand that correctly?
Yes, that is correct. Hmm.
So will there be any more listening sessions for the rest of this year that we may want to share or get out to the public?
Yes, actually, our next listening section is the third Saturday of next month, which is October the 15th.
October
Um,
15th.
yes,
And if we wanted to, who will we
from 1
contact
to 3 p.m.
for 1 to 3 p.m.? So is that a webinar, or is that a who will we contact if we wanted to if somebody wanted
Okay.
to attend that or participate in that session.
Candace Coleman.
Candace
Candace
Coleman.
Coleman will be. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so Candace Coleman from Access Living.
Yes. I'll
Okay,
definitely send you her information.
absolutely, absolutely. We'll be happy to share Candace's information, and if anybody else would like to participate on those listening sessions, that would definitely, that would be helpful to themselves and everyone. So at this time, I want to thank you again for coming on FRCD on CAN TV. Typically, we focus a lot on special education, but this
Mhm.
is an area that again affects many students, many youths. It can affect anybody, and it's
Yeah.
good, and rather than necessarily throw judgment or anything on it, we need to, address this issue and address the victims that have experienced this. So thank you again for shedding light, and thank you again. The book that you wrote, everyone, if you get a chance, Miracle Man, written by
Yes.
Will Rowling. Check out his book. I'm sure it's like a pillar of like inspiration, especially of overcoming. So again, thank you so much.
Thank you
So
for having me.
you're welcome. Thank you. So this concludes FRCD on CAN TV. My name is Paula Wills from Family Resource Center on Disabilities. Thank you and have a wonderful week.